Part 122. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1211. The latest chapter of the Wanchai I created is updated the fastest. He can use his own magnetic field to merge with other magnetic fields, and then influence them to produce all kinds of incredible behaviors. For example, he can float 3 feet in the air, glide briefly with the help of the power of the magnetic field, and do all kinds of behaviors that violate reality. At this time, the magnetic field of Lin Yi's whole body has been emitted, and it interacts with the magnetic fields around him. He can move in the air at any time with the help of this influence, and at the same time, he can use the fluctuations of the magnetic field to detect any unknown existence, saving the consumption of spiritual waves. According to the current investigation information, the attack of this mysterious black shadow is not instantly fatal. This gives enough buffer time. For him, what is also dangerous is the ability to kill directly without reason. Standing in the hall of Yeshu apartment, Lin Yi looked around. There is a passage on both sides, and there is a window at the end of each passage. There are rows of doors on both sides, and there are all single-room apartments here. Lin Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a trace of thought. Then the next step is to wait. He did not intend to go deeper into the apartment, but to attract the mysterious black shadow in the hall. Next, he was going to do an experiment. Tick, tick, tick. I don't know where, but suddenly there was a sound of water dripping. In this dead silent Yeshu apartment, the sound was so strange. When Lin Yi heard the sound, his brows slightly frowned and his eyes slightly condensed. New changes? Or is the level of the strange incident upgraded? In the public information about the strange incident he got, there was a strange incident. Once upgraded, there might be a new change. This kind of change often carries great danger. Thinking of this, he suddenly became alert, and his own magnetic field resonated more and more with the outside world. Resonance is the simplest way to use one's own magnetic field to control the external magnetic field. At the same time, his eyes kept looking left and right, up and down. Although the sound was very strange, it seemed that there was no harm at present. After about 5 minutes, Lin Yi's pupils suddenly shrank slightly, and his eyes looked at the location of the stairs. Suddenly, a figure appeared there, and it looked very strange. He was black, and was walking down step by step. You could see that there seemed to be a layer of black stuff on his body, which was dripping slowly. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. This strange sound came from it. At this moment, it looked not like a shadow at all, but more like an entity, except that it was black, and black liquid was still dripping from its body. He came to the hall, and the black body looked at Lin Yi from the front. He raised his hand slowly, making a strange and dry sound. He, Kala. This strange sound was intermittent, making it difficult to hear what he wanted to say. Lin Yi looked at him calmly and said slowly. Yamada-gi, it must be very uncomfortable to be killed by someone, right? Especially killed by a loved one. So you are full of resentment, so you will always remain in this world, right? Hearing Lin Yi's words, the strange black figure who was originally walking towards him suddenly stopped. The black figure was trembling strangely, as if filled with endless anger and excitement. In Lin Yi's eyes, countless black lines filled the black shadow. At this time, these black lines in the body of the black shadow were shaking like crazy, entangled together, and swirling like a whirlpool. Just looking at it makes people feel sick, an indescribable darkness surges in the black lines. Lin Yi's eyes penetrated the black lines and saw the center of the black lines. In the center of countless black lines, he saw a strange thing. It was a true destiny connected by countless black lines. At this time, black lines grew on the true destiny like blood vessels. Seeing this scene, his eyes condensed slightly. This was the first time he saw the true destiny and black lines appear at the same time. What's going on? Just as he was thinking, the strange black shadow slowly changed. The outline of the head of the black shadow began to appear, and it became clearer and clearer, turning into a black head. It was a skinny face. Empty eyes looked at Lin Yi. What do you know? Do you know who killed me? Lin Yi looked at Yamada-gi, whose face was revealed in front of him, with a hint of indifference in his eyes. Let me ask you a question. If I hand the murderer to you, what will you do? The dry face opened his mouth slightly, and he seemed to be stunned, not knowing what to say. Lin Yi saw the black lines wriggling wildly, looking like countless earthworms, squeezed into a ball. At this time, the true life became more and more weird under the parasitism of the black lines. The true life seemed to swell, with countless black lines running through it, covering the surface, and seemed to be stirring in the true life. I want to kill him. I want revenge, he made me like this. I want revenge, I want revenge. He roared wildly, and his whole body began to stretch rapidly, turning into a huge black shadow, and suddenly pounced on Lin Yi. Facing the oncoming attack, Lin Yi's magnetic field moved slightly, and he disappeared in a flash. He avoided the black shadow that rushed over, and appeared behind the shadow like a ghost. As the shadow made a voice of great resentment, he seemed to have completely lost his mind. He has completely lost his mind, which is not easy to deal with. He seems to be driven by resentment. This should be the source of his logic chain. To solve the resentment, the only way to eliminate the source of resentment is to eliminate the source of resentment. The murderer. Facing Yamada-gi, who launched the attack, Lin Yi's eyes showed a faint cold light. Then he turned around and took a step forward, and the power of true destiny flashed. The next moment, he had passed through a wall and appeared on the street next to Yushu apartment. He didn't want to have a direct battle with this kind of strange incident, which was meaningless. After leaving Yushu apartment, his eyes locked on Yushu apartment and continued to observe. The black shadow of Yamada-gi in the apartment was also changing distortedly. He waved his hands frantically, as if he was hammering the air, or venting his anger. Finally, he slowly melted and turned into a black shadow again, lying on the floor of the hall. Then, this shadow moved along the floor of the hall like a swimming fish, heading upstairs. It seemed that he couldn't find Lin Yi, so he finally calmed down. Lin Yi looked at this scene, his expression cold and silent. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1212. Looking at Yamada-gi returning upstairs, Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. All this showed one thing: the other party did not seem to have any intention of leaving Yushu apartment. And he found one thing: the external black lines have basically stopped increasing. In other words, the current situation has stabilized. There will be no large-scale outbreaks for the time being. It should be the effect of network shielding. His eyes flickered slightly, and what he suggested to the Tokyo Bay Abnormal Investigation Bureau had shown results. Slightly relieved, he showed a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Then next, it is the second stage of the experiment. He turned and walked towards the door of Yushu apartment, where Yamada Junji was still waiting for him. At this time, Yamada Junji looked at Lin Yi, who was walking from another street, and his eyes showed a trace of surprise. "Mr. Lin Yi, how did you get out of there?" Lin Yi smiled, "Because I collided with the shadow inside, and then chose to break out from a safe direction. Now you can narrow the blockade range, just control it outside this Yushu apartment. At least 100 meters away should be safe, and the expansion of this ghost story should be temporarily stopped. But the network shielding cannot be relaxed, and it still needs to be maintained at the highest level." Yamada Junji heard Lin Yi's suggestion and nodded slightly. "Okay, we will gradually lift the blockade. Is the situation here solved?" Lin Yi shook his head slightly. "Not yet. I just conducted the first experiment. If I want to completely solve the problem here, I need a second experiment. Yamada Junji immediately understood Lin Yi's idea. Are you looking for the logical chain? Lin Yi nodded, yes. Yamada Junji's face showed a trace of thought. We have also sorted out the logical chain of this incident. The final conclusion is that the school bullying at the time should be the root of all this. In theory, as long as the root of all this is eliminated, the logical chain collapses and the ghost story will disappear. We have humanely destroyed all those school bullies. But unfortunately, the logical chain did not collapse, which means that they are not the cause of the incident. In the end, we can't solve this matter from the logical chain. So Mr. Lin Yi, do you have any new discoveries? Lin Yi smiled faintly. Of course, it is because of the new discoveries that I know what the logical chain of this matter is. But this logical chain still needs to be verified and tested before it can be finally determined. Yamada Junji heard this and showed a trace of surprise in his eyes. He looked at Lin Yi deeply. Mr. Lin Yi is really amazing. You can find a new logical chain from the information we provided. Lin Yi shook his head. I am just guessing, I can't be 100% sure. It's just that you didn't notice some things. Yamada Junji nodded. I wonder when the second experiment can start. Looking at Yamada Junji's expectant and inquiring eyes, Lin Yi smiled faintly. It will take some time for my companions to bring back the culprit of everything. Yamada Junji's eyes lit up when he heard this. Then I will look forward to it. Time went by in a blink of an eye and it was 7 o'clock in the evening. Lin Yi had been squatting outside Yushu's apartment. His face was very calm, and he had been observing the situation inside Yushu's apartment. If there were any changes, he would notice them immediately. At this time, a black car slowly drove from a distance, passed through the blockading soldiers, and came to Lin Yi's side. Click. The door of the car opened, and Fukada Anko, Sakuramiya Shirley, and an old woman about 60 years old walked out. The old lady had gray hair, a frost-covered face, and wrinkles all over her face. She was wearing a decent black dress. The whole gave people a clean feeling, but inexplicably had a gloomy temperament. Lin Yi looked at them and finally fell on the old lady. Hello, Mrs. Yamada. The old woman was silent at this time, looking at Lin Yi without answering, but her eyes revealed a dead silence, as if she didn't care about anything. Lin Yi smiled faintly. This time I asked you to come here to solve the problem of your son Yamada-gi. When the old woman heard this, her body trembled slightly, raised her head, and stared at Lin Yi, but still said nothing. Yamada Junji, who was standing aside, saw this scene, and his eyes were thoughtful, as if he thought of something. Lin Yi continued, I have investigated all kinds of information about your son's death. Your son was poisoned. And he was poisoned by a detergent that had been in his lunchbox for a long time. I looked at the lunchbox. It was made of glass, not like the lunchboxes sold outside. You dripped detergent into it every time you delivered food to him. The purpose was to slowly poison him. Logically speaking, he is your son. Why did you do this? Hearing Lin Yi's words, the three people next to him all stared at the old woman, and they were all a little bit unbelievable. Hearing this, the old lady's face became paler and paler, and she looked at Lin Yi. Obviously the other party had spoken her secret. She took a deep breath and slowly opened her mouth. Because, he is a waste. The Yamada family was originally a famous family, with excellent jobs and assets, and my husband's annual pension is nearly 10 million. We have high hopes for him and spent a lot of money on him. Originally, he had excellent grades and was among the best in the class. Our family is harmonious and the future is promising. But, just because he was bullied, he became a stay-at-home. Giving up his studies is equivalent to ruining the future of our family. Originally, I still had hope for him, so I supported him. But my husband encountered a crisis and was framed by his boss. I was fired because of my misfortune. Our family's income suddenly fell to the bottom. We had a considerable amount of savings. I told him to go back to school and finish college. It's not a problem for him to get into Tokyo Bay University. When he gets a job, he will definitely be middle class, and our family will definitely be able to regain its glory. But do you know? He shattered my last hope. All the superior life is far away from me, and I have nothing. My husband also completely lost hope after he refused and chose to wander the streets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Xuanhuan Luan Tianji. Chapter 1213. My husband is gone. I can only receive the minimum living allowance, sold the house, and live in a shabby hut. I rely on the remaining money to make ends meet. Do you know how comfortable I lived in the first half of my life? As my son, he shoulders the hope of the family and our future, but he makes us live like this. How can I not resent him? He deprived us of our last hope. Ms. Yamada said, her face was distorted, angry, and resentful. Obviously, she has not had a smooth life in these years. Her weather-beaten face and angry expression all foreshadow her experience. From a life full of hope, to the decline of the family, to pinning hopes on her own children, and then to despair, the ups and downs in between are indeed not something that normal people can bear. The three people next to him were all silent. Fukada Anzi and Yamada Junji actually understood Ms. Yamada very well. They are all from the island country and have the same culture. For these well-off families, they have received elite education since childhood, and their family concepts are far stronger than those of ordinary families. The hope of the whole family rests on them, and when these children choose to escape, they will naturally feel disappointed and angry. If they have a good income, they can still accept it, but when they also slide down from their own position, this gap will be passed on to their children. The final result is the destruction of the whole family. This kind of thing is too common in the island country. Even more extreme things have happened before. Lin Yi nodded slightly when he heard this. Then accompany me to see your son. Ms. Yamada was stunned when she heard Lin Yi's words, my son, isn't he dead? Looking at Ms. Yamada, who was full of doubts, Lin Yi showed a faint smile. He is indeed dead, but the things he resents are still alive. So come with me. Only you can resolve his resentment. As he said, Lin Yi had already walked towards Yushu's apartment and waved to Ms. Yamada. Ms. Yamada looked at Lin Yi's back and the three people looking at her around her. She knew that she seemed to have no other choice. With a trace of inexplicable self-mockery on her face, she followed Lin Yi and walked towards Yushu's apartment. Her eyes looked at Yushu's apartment, and countless complex emotions flashed through her. She had come here twice a month in the past few years. This place once placed her hopes, but it also sent her into despair. When Lin Yi and Ms. Yamada entered the lobby of Yushu's apartment, the shadow hidden in Yushu's apartment seemed to feel something. A black shadow struggled to get up from the ground, dripping with black liquid, climbing the stairs step by step, and came to the lobby again. The shadow of Yamada-gi, dripping with black liquid, appeared in the lobby, looking straight at Ms. Yamada. Casa, Mom. The dry voice sounded slowly, as if it contained countless emotions. The black liquid slowly slid down from its head, and a dry face appeared in front of Ms. Yamada. It was a black head with almost only a layer of skin left. Ms. Yamada looked at the black figure that suddenly appeared, and the thin face, opened her mouth slightly, and her body trembled twice. She seemed to want to say something several times, but she seemed to be unable to say anything. Lin Yi on the side looked at them quietly. Yamada-gi, I have brought all the culprits. The person who killed you is in front of you. Do you want to release your resentment? Yamada-gi looked at Ms. Yamada in front of him, and the countless black lines in his body began to stir wildly. His true destiny was also constantly twisting, and countless black lines were pouring into his true destiny wildly. Lin Yi quietly observed everything and made all preparations at the same time. Yamada-gi looked at Mrs. Yamada. Why do you want to kill me? Mom. Mrs. Yamada looked at Yamada-gi in front of her. She took a deep breath, and then her face showed a trace of majesty. Because you are the heir of the Yamada family, the one who should lead our family to glory, but you gave up everything and cut off all our hopes. So I hate you madly. Is there anything wrong? I gave you your life, so I want to take it back. Can't I? Yamada-gi listened to Mrs. Yamada's words, and the black lines in his body suddenly paused, as if his emotions stabilized in an instant. Then, something strange happened. The black lines in the original true destiny were pouring out madly. Quickly separated from the true destiny, as if there was some power in the true destiny that was driving them. Soon, the black lines seemed to be completely removed from the true destiny. But in the end, a black line was firmly rooted in the true destiny. The black liquid dripping from Yamada-gi's body quickly disappeared, revealing a black figure. He had no fixed facial features, like a thin shadow. A faint voice sounded in Mrs. Yamada's ears. It was never you who really killed me. So you don't have to feel guilty. Mrs. Yamada was stunned when she heard this, and Lin Yi beside her was also suddenly shocked. But you should have died of poisoning. There are obvious traces of detergent in the lunchbox. They are all pickles your mother brought you. The shadow of Yamada-gi turned to look at Lin Yi. Take her away. Don't come again. As he said that, he turned and walked towards the wall, blending into it like a ghost. The next moment, he disappeared along the wall on the stairs. At this time, in Lin Yi's eyes, he could see the countless lines, once again drilling into the true destiny, completely submerging it. Lin Yi turned around and grabbed Mrs. Yamada's arm, and left the hall in a flash. The entire Yushu apartment was still as silent as it was at the beginning. Outside the apartment, Lin Yi showed a trace of thought on his face, while Mrs. Yamada looked confused. She couldn't understand what happened. A faint smile appeared on Lin Yi's lips. Interesting, the inference was wrong. It turns out that Mrs. Yamada is not the real murderer. Well, Yamada-gi seems to know that Mrs. Yamada poisoned the pickles. But he still seems to eat these things. It seems that he is also determined to die, so what does he mean by real killing? From his tone, there are changes in his true fate. There must be another murderer. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1214. Update the latest chapter of the Wanchai View I created as soon as possible. That person is the real murderer. He killed Yamada-gi through some unknown method. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Junji Yamada, who looked dim. Mr. Yamada Junji, something very strange happened. I feel that your investigation of Yamada-gi is incomplete. Next, I hope you can re-investigate all of Yamada-gi's interpersonal relationships and send them to me. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow circled M. Yamada Junji looked confused when he heard this, but he immediately came to his senses and nodded. I understand, I'll make arrangements when I get back. The only good news now is that the incident in Yushu apartments will not expand for the time being. But you have to send people to guard here and don't let people in casually. Otherwise things could change again if there's a stimulus. Hearing Lin Yi's warning, Yamada Junji nodded quickly. Understood, we will be careful next time /. I only give you 3 days to investigate Yamada-gi. Yamada Junji looked solemn. Okay, Mr. Lin Yi, please don't worry, we will definitely come up with what you want within 3 days. Nodding, Lin Yi looked at Fukata Kyoko and Sakuramiya Shirley. Let's go, we are going to another place. There was a hint of surprise in Sakuramiya Shirley's eyes, but she didn't say anything. Mrs. Yamada was soon taken away from here, while Lin Yi, Sakuramiya Shirley, and Fukata Kyoko drove to another place. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye, and they arrived at the largest slum in Tokyo Bay. Known as the abandoned area of Tokyo Babylon, this is a very old industrial area with at least 20 or 30 different buildings. It's a very dangerous place, full of neglected poor people. In the eyes of the world, island countries seem to be places where the gap between rich and poor is not large, and there are at most some homeless people. There are no real slums. But in fact, there is also a large slum in Tokyo Bay, the largest city in the island country. There are at least more than 100,000 real poor people here, almost all of whom are undocumented black workers, homeless people, and all kinds of people. Various crimes occur every day, but no one cares about it. Even the police will avoid it. This is a place that has been abandoned by the entire island country by default, that is, it cannot be seen, so it does not exist. After Lin Yi and Fukata Kyoko arrived here, the car parked at the entrance of this area, a public parking lot. The three of them came here on foot. Both sides of the street were filled with idle homeless people. Most of them were in their 30s and 40s. They were full of indifference and numbness, and seemed to have no interest in anything. There are only a few young men and women, some still getting needles on the streets. This is an extremely decadent area, filled with a sense of decay and decline. Just stepping into this place, the three of them seemed out of place. Their arrival naturally attracted the attention of many people, but these people just looked at them. Lin Yi looked at Fukata Kyoko and said calmly, "Where is Yamada Taro?" Hearing this, Kyoko Fukata replied with a serious face, "Taro Yamada has been wandering in Tokyo Bay since he lost his job. Because he is Yamada Kiiya's father, our people have been following him all the time. The purpose is that one day in the future, it may come in handy when solving the strange incident in Yushu apartment. According to the latest news I got, he entered this area the day before yesterday. This nameless zone has existed for a long time, and basically we have no informants here. But what is certain is that the people who enter here are basically people who cannot survive." Lin Yi nodded slightly, with a trace of contemplation in his eyes. "Come on, let's go in and find him. You have a picture of him, right?" Kyoko Fukata nodded quickly, "Yes." As he said that, he took out his mobile phone and opened a photo. It was an old man in his 50s. A weathered face, full of exhaustion and numbness, obviously this is a recent photo. Lin Yi walked in front and walked toward the crowd of people watching around him. These people gathered on the side of the road and looked at Lin Yi approaching, with a hint of vigilance in their eyes. Lin Yi came in front of them, and a faint magnetic field spread out, quickly affecting their sanity. He reached out and took the phone from Fukata Kyoko. "Have you seen this person? Where is he?" "In a basement. Taro Yamada was in pain all over and was tied up with chains. Yesterday, I originally wanted to enter this unknown area and blend into this gathering place for homeless people. But he didn't expect that he would be knocked unconscious and then be locked up here. The scariest thing is that there are bright lights in this basement." Several operating rooms appeared, and there were also several chained homeless people next to him. He knew he was in big trouble. These seemed to be the legendary gangs that sold human organs. His body was filled with fear, but there was a hint of relief in his heart. If he died like this, it might not be a bad thing. At least his miserable life has come to an end. At this moment, the basement door was blasted open with a loud bang. Several figures rolled in from the gate like gourds. Then, 3 figures walked in from the gate. Those people who rolled like gourds got up from the ground and looked at the 3 people with horror, as if there was a devil there. After the 3 figures came in, they walked straight towards Yamada Tadaro. Lin Yi's eyes fell on the tied Yamada Tadaro. "Are you Yamada Tadaro?" Yamada Tadaro raised his confused eyes and looked at the person standing in front of him. "Yes," he said weakly. "I came for your son, Yamada-gi." Yamada Tadaro had no expression on his face when he heard this, and he said lightly. However, in Lin Yi's eyes, any of his emotions were hidden. Yamada Tadaro's heart obviously jumped suddenly. Lin Yi showed a faint smile on his face. Sure enough, just as I guessed, this person has a problem. At this time, Lin Yi seemed to have guessed what was going on. Okay, come with me. As he said that, he raised his hand and waved it slightly, and the shackles on Yamada Taro's hands collapsed directly. Then he followed Lin Yi and left here in a daze. Soon, this unknown area disappeared behind a few people. Fukada Anza drove the car and took them to the Abnormal Event Investigation Bureau at Lin Yi's request. About half an hour later, they arrived at the famous Ginza building on Kabukiko Street. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1215. They went directly to the 11th floor of the building, walked through the corridor, and came to the huge conference room where Junji Yamada was waiting for them. Junji Yamada had already informed Kyoko Fukada that the information Lin Yi wanted had been prepared again in just a few hours. Lin Yi and the other four entered the conference room. Taro Yamada was always in a hazy state and completely lost his independent consciousness. Junji Yamada glanced at Taro Yamada at this time, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He could naturally see that Taro Yamada seemed to have lost his independent consciousness and fell into confusion. He took a deep look at Lin Yi. He was more and more surprised and alert to this mysterious person. Controlling the spirit of life was not a simple means. At this time, he looked at Lin Yi and pushed all the information in front of him. This is all the information on Yamada Kiya that our staff has collected in the past 2 hours. A lot of it was information that we had eliminated in the past, and now it has been reorganized and classified into one category. It records all the information that can be found about Yamada Kiya from birth to his death. Lin Yi looked at the information that was almost half a meter high in front of him, and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Although there was a lot of information, he did not feel pressured, but began to read the information one by one. As for Yamada Taro, he was controlled by Sakuramiya surely to prevent him from doing something troublesome. Yamada Junji sat aside and waited quietly, waiting for Lin Yi to draw a conclusion. Lin Yi has been flipping through countless information, and the light of the true destiny solution is flashing in his eyes. All the information will be automatically understood by him, and the past of this person who has built a model in his mind will be clearly visible. Even some unrecorded information will be automatically deduced. Any information will be magnified in the true destiny solution, and no secrets can be hidden. The true destiny solution, observing everything, should not be limited to objects. It is the understanding and comprehension of the rules and laws of external objects. As long as there is enough information, a person's past can also be analyzed. Soon he saw a crucial piece of information. Looking at this information, a faint sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. So that's it? He, I know where the crux of everything is. Yamada Junji and Fukada Anza beside him looked at him in surprise. Let's go, it's useless for us to stay here. Whether we can solve the problem depends on today. Yamada Junji looked at the confident Lin Yi, and a trace of expectation rose in his heart again. Half an hour later, they returned to the front of Yashu apartment. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. The whole street was dead silent. The houses on both sides were lit up, and most people were resting at home. You wait for me outside. As he said, Yamada Taro had already stepped into the apartment in front of him under the control of Lin Yi. When they entered the hall for less than 10 seconds, the strange shadow appeared again. The moment it appeared this time, madness and resentment were overwhelming. A deafening sound buzzed. How dare you come, how dare you see me? Father, Yamada Taro. The black shadow at this time once again revealed that thin face, twisted with anger and resentment. That was a deep resentment, it seemed that even the water of 3 rivers could not wash it away. At this time, Lin Yi looked at Yamatagi, his eyes clear. Is this the source of your resentment? Your father Yamato? No, it should be said that this person who has no blood relationship with you is regarded as your father by you. At the same time, he is also the one who killed your heart and spirit and cried forever. Hearing what Lin Yi said, Yamatagi trembled all over, as if he thought of something bad, and his eyes showed great resentment. You know this when you were in high school. You were bullied and injured. When you had a blood test at the hospital, you found that your blood type seemed to be different from your father's. It is impossible for your blood types to be father and son. Because you have studied biology courses, you noticed this. Bullying is just a superficial phenomenon. You just can't bear that you are a bastard. So you gave up studying, gave up your future, and gave up the Yamada family, because you are not a member of this family at all. Don't say it. Don't say it. Ah. So you ate the poisonous pickles your mother gave you, because you wanted to die and you didn't want to live at all. The identity of a bastard made you unable to bear this pain. So you resent Yamato for not being able to control his wife. Give birth to a bastard like you, right? Ah. The black shadow transformed by Yamatagi let out a crazy and painful howl. Ah, shut up. He's right in front of you now, you can get revenge. Lin Yi's words were full of temptation and rang in his ears. Yamatagi's eyes were filled with immense hatred, and he looked fiercely at Yamato who was standing in front of him. Yamato had been released from Lin Yi's control at this time, and he heard everything from beginning to end. Looking at the monster like Yamatagi, his face showed a hint of complexity. I didn't expect that resentment would turn you into this. In fact, I knew you were not my son. So I never cared about you, only your mother forced you to study. So when you were decadent, I was very happy. At least in my failed life, there is still someone like you who makes me happy. Yamato's face was indifferent, and he looked at Yamatagi with the same eyes as a stranger. Yamatagi heard his words, his body trembled slightly, and his resentment became more serious. It's all you, it's your cowardice. Kill you. Yamatagi seemed to have reached the maximum anger and resentment in Yamato's words. Then, he suddenly pounced on him, and the infinite darkness instantly submerged Yamato. Lin Yi, who was on the side, had already stepped out of the hall. The black figure of Yamatagi directly involved Yamato. The next moment, a sound of bones breaking and rubbing came from the black figure. It seemed that something was being ground. In Lin Yi's eyes, the light of the true destiny flickered, and he could see with his own eyes that Yamato's body was rapidly disintegrating and turning into a piece of minced meat. The other person's face seemed to show a trace of relief, and he died in peace and tranquility. At this time, with the death of Yamato, Yamatagui also seemed to be undergoing drastic changes. His resentment seemed to be eradicated, and black lines disappeared from his body. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1216. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. The black lines that originally filled the true destiny were squeezed out like a boil. Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot circled M. One by one, the lines disappeared from the true destiny, and finally, the black line that was firmly rooted in the true destiny slowly broke away from the true destiny. The true destiny seemed to have returned to its original state, and then became illusory, and then disappeared. Lin Yi couldn't see where the true destiny had gone. The black figure in front of him also dissipated at an alarming speed, and finally disappeared completely with a sigh. Why is this happening? I just want to be for the glory of the family. The low and unwilling voice finally disappeared slowly. Where the black shadow disappeared, a hazy, indescribable light slowly appeared. Lin Yi took a step forward and reached out to grab the light. The light flowed along his arm and into his heart. Lin Yi took a deep breath. This time the matter was resolved. The strange atmosphere that permeated the entire Yushu apartment also disappeared after Yamada-gi disappeared. Is this the way to cut off the root of the logical chain and eliminate the freak incident? It is indeed different from my use of the rules of the ghost story itself to eliminate the ghost story. But both will give birth to this mysterious light, that's enough. With a satisfied smile on his face, he turned and walked out of the Yushu apartment. Outside the Yushu apartment, Yamada Junji looked at Lin Yi who came out, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. Mr. Lin Yi, has the strange story in there been solved? Lin Yi smiled faintly. The matter has been completely resolved, and this place can be unblocked next. Yamada Junji showed a bright smile on his face. That's great. But when can I get my reward? Yamada Junji heard this, his face solemn. Within 3 days, we will complete the procedures, and you can go to interrogate the person you want. Lin Yi heard this and nodded slightly. Okay. 3 days passed in a blink of an eye, and the strange story incident in Yushu apartment has completely ended. There is no news related to this incident on the internet, and it seems that no one cares about why there was a big blockade a few days ago. At this time, Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely have arrived at the foot of Mount Fulishi next to Tokyo Bay. There is a secret underground base here, which is specially used to imprison dangerous godsons detained by the island country. After 3 days of approval procedures, Lin Yi's reward can finally be collected. Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely sat in a jeep, and Yamada Junji was driving the car in front. At this time, they were driving on a muddy ground without a road and had stopped in front of a forest. Yamada Junji turned his head and looked at the two people and said, "You two, we are going to walk next." The base where those God-given ones are imprisoned is located deep in the forest at the foot of Mount Fulishi. It is impossible to reach there by modern transportation. You can only walk there. The natural magnetic field here is chaotic, and ordinary compasses cannot find the correct location. It can only be reached by relying on the marks we left and special positioning methods. As they said, the three got off the jeep and walked towards a forest in front. The forest is the largest suicide sanctuary in the entire island country. Legend has it that tens of thousands of people come here to seek death every year, and it is full of countless terrifying legends. Legend has it that there are demons in it, which will lure people who enter here to self-destruction. Since ancient times, there have been countless legends and horror stories circulating here. Under the leadership of Yamada Junji, they soon entered the interior of the forest. Yamada Junji took out a tool and began to quickly find the direction and locate the position. The tool he took out was obviously a modern item, similar to a tablet computer, with coordinate maps flashing on it. The three began to move forward quickly, heading deep into the forest. Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely were not ordinary people at all. They could walk on flat ground in this rugged forest. But Yamada Junji was completely an ordinary person, not even a god-given one. He wore a pair of boots that reached his calves, obviously for the convenience of walking in this forest. But his speed was much slower than the two of them. About 2 hours later, Yamada Junji brought Lin Yi and the other two to a small hill, panting. He looked at Lin Yi and the other two, his face was not red and he was not out of breath, as if nothing had happened, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. But he said nothing. For the God-given one, anything is possible. At this time, a cave appeared behind the small hill, extending into the inside, and it was unknown where it led to. Yamada Junji led the two into the cave, which was very cool inside and there was no light at all. Yamada Junji took out a flashlight and illuminated the cave, which suddenly became bright. Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely immediately noticed something was wrong with the cave. The cave was very clean, the ground was flattened, and it was obviously full of traces of human activity. After walking about 10 meters, they came to an iron door. Looking at the iron door, Lin Yi immediately knew that this should be the entrance to the base. Yamada Junji came to the side of the iron door, where there was a protruding box that looked like a human figure video. He aimed his eyes at the surface of the box, and then a red light shot out from the box, quickly scanning his eyes. A few seconds later, the mechanized iron door slowly opened, and inside the iron door was an elevator. Yamada Junji turned his head and looked at the two people. "Please follow me, are we going to enter the real base next?" The three entered the elevator, and the elevator door slowly closed. The elevator quickly went down, about 100 meters down, and the elevator door slowly opened. Then, what appeared in front of Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely was a picture that surprised them. Transparent small boxes, layered, appeared in a huge space. There were transparent roads connecting the small boxes, and each of these boxes was about 3 meters long and wide. And these boxes were transparent, and everyone inside could see every move clearly. What surprised the two most was that these people had some ring-shaped objects flashing on their necks and arms. There were about 10 of them, and the distance between each box was at least 10 meters. All the boxes were hung in the air, staggered in order, and surrounded by soldiers with guns and live ammunition. Each of them stood at a different sentry post, watching the people in the boxes vigilantly at all times, extremely alert. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1217. I only heard Yamada Junji say, "All the prisoners here are God-given. The rings on their necks, hands and feet are all powerful explosives. Even microbombs are implanted in their bodies. Once activated, they will be blown to pieces immediately. These transparent boxes are all made of mysterious materials. They are made by the God-given ability that has mastered the ability. This material is not only strong and indestructible, but also has the power to seal the ability of the God-given. Even if they have this ability, they cannot use it. They can only become prisoners here." When Lin Yi heard this, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. He knew what the true destiny was too well. It was a power that could not be truly restricted. The light of the true destiny flashed in his eyes, and the strange material was also clear in his eyes. He could feel that these materials contained some kind of true destiny power, and the nature of this power seemed to invalidate everything. All the power of the true destiny will be invalid, and this power itself will not dissipate. It will condense on a substance and exist forever. And the invalid power in this material is very powerful. There is only one way to break this power, that is, the prisoner uses the ultimate true power, which exceeds the upper limit of the invalid true power. Seeing through the effect of this true power, Lin Yi smiled faintly. There is no invincible power in this world. The reason why they are sealed is only because their power is not strong enough. When their power is strong enough, the seal will have no effect. Hearing Lin Yi reveal the secrets of these crystal prisons, Yamada Junji showed a bitter smile on his face. "Mr. Lin Yi, you are so amazing. You can see through everything at a glance." Lin Yi smiled. "Okay, let's start the handover." Yamada Junji's face was serious and nodded. "Please follow me, 2 digits." As he said, he turned around and took the two people to the right side of this huge empty base. At this time, the guards seemed to have received orders, and everyone just looked at them and did not stop them. They soon came to the right border, where the wall was a door after another, and the height of the entire space reached 10 meters. Every 3 meters there is a suspended corridor, where not only patrolling soldiers but also doors are placed one after another. All the functional rooms in the base are dug out directly from the mountain wall. Junji Yamada, with Lin Yi and Shirley Sakuramiya, has opened a door with the sign of the warden. The three of them entered the door, which was an office with very formal decoration. A complete set of office sofas, coffee tables, bookcases, filing cabinets, desks, etc. Sitting behind the desk was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was only about 7 centimeters tall, looked slightly plump, and had a mustache. He looked at Junji Yamada, and a smile appeared on his face. "Captain Yamada, you are here." His eyes fell on Lin Yi and Shirley Sakuramiya, and he smiled politely. This should be the famous Mr. Lin Yi. Lin Yi looked at him and smiled. "Hello, I'm Lin Yi." The warden laughed and said, "I'm Yamashita Jiro, nice to meet you." Lin Yi said lightly, "Let's not talk nonsense, now I want to take a criminal away, is there a list of them? I want to choose one." Yamashita Jiro didn't care about it and took a file book from his desk. "It's ready for you. It contains all the files of the 10 God-given people, with our detailed analysis of them, including their abilities." Lin Yi nodded slightly and took the file book handed over by Yamashita Jiro. After opening it, he began to watch one by one. These 10 God-given people are all natives of the island country. After they got their abilities, they all became very inflated, doing all kinds of evil, which caused a series of problems. For example, one of them is Yoshida Jiwa, a God-given person, whose ability is infinite vibration. In 2012, he once triggered his ability, shaking the trench near the island country, and finally triggered the continuous resonance of the entire trench. A tsunami hit Fukushima, an island country, causing an unparalleled disaster. Finally, he was arrested by the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau of the island country and locked up. And this person is the least evil among the 10 prisoners, but he accidentally caused a lot of trouble. The most evil one among them is called the leader of Tokyo Bay Shaolin Yasuo. He used his evil power to seduce a large number of people and quietly developed an evil sect. Through this evil sect, he madly made money and asked the members of the sect to offer their women for his enjoyment. At the same time, he would seduce those who were weak-willed and decadent in life to death. This sect did not attract attention at first. As the number of suicides caused by the sect increased, even reaching an astonishing 10,000 people per year, it finally attracted the attention of the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau. After investigation, it was found that there was a God-given behind it. After being arrested, this Shaolin Kangfu still wanted to control the people in the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau. But unfortunately, the Investigation Bureau had already conducted a detailed investigation on him, and his abilities could not be used at all. The people who escorted him were also godsons who mastered the abilities of the spiritual level, and all his abilities were invalidated. These were all evil done through abilities, some were subjective, some were unintentional, and they were all relatively peaceful, not too bloody. Among these people, there was also a guy nicknamed Heisei Butcher, who was once a teacher in a middle school in an island country. His appearance was very charming and elegant, and he had returned from studying abroad, and was even more sought after by young people in the school. But one night on Halloween, when the school held a Halloween festival, this Heisei Butcher turned into an evil butcher. Holding a knife, like an artist, he cut everyone in the school, cut them into strips of dried meat, and neatly placed them on the classroom steps and playground. A huge flower of flesh and blood bloomed on the playground, and that was his most proud work. His ability was also very strange, and he could make any living thing he touched be distorted under his power. Lin Yi carefully read the records of the God-given people in these files, as well as their abilities, personalities, and the tragedies they had caused. He quickly picked out a person whose ability was not strong, but more of an auxiliary ability. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1218. The latest chapter of the Wanchai I Created is updated the fastest. His ability is immortal regeneration. Although his physical strength can only be compared to that of ordinary people, no matter how he is killed, he will always be resurrected after a period of time. This is his ability, which is very similar to Lin Yi's immortality. This extremely similar ability, Lin Yi is very interested in understanding, maybe he can figure out the law of constructing life. This person is called Seinyi Kangbai, a middle-aged man about 50 years old. He was originally a homeless man, but was chopped to the ground in a conflict between homeless people. If there were no accidents, he would die at that time, but surprisingly, he did not die, and his wounds recovered in a short time. It was not until then that he knew that he had an immortal body. Then he began to rob homeless people crazily, and even clashed with those gang members, relying on his immortal body to defeat them. In the end, he even became the new gang boss of the island country. And his existence also caused a lot of bloodshed in the underworld. In the end, he was discovered by the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau, and then arrested and secretly detained. Compared with the other 9 people, his ability is more limited and his lethality is smaller, so he is a very good research object. I am more interested in the Suno Kangbai, let's take him. Hearing this, Yamashita nodded slightly. Okay, he will appear in front of you in 5 minutes. Lin Yi nodded slightly satisfied. 5 minutes passed in a flash, and a 50-year-old, fat man appeared in the warden's office. At this time, he was shackled and handcuffed, and the bomb rings on his neck and limbs were not removed. Yamashita looked at Lin Yi and said, "Mr. Lin Yi, if you need it, we can send it to the place you specify." Lin Yi looked at Suno Kangbai in front of him, and there was a hint of ferocity in the other's eyes. "What are you looking at? I'll bite you to death if you look again." Even though he was a prisoner on the street, he was not afraid at all. He knew that he could not die, and even if he was hit in the head by a bomb, it would not kill him, so he was fearless. Lin Yi looked at him and smiled, "You probably think you won't die. But I can tell you very clearly, God-given, even if your ability is immortality. It's not true immortality, but I need to kill you many times before you will really die. So don't pretend to be so fierce in front of me, it's useless. If necessary, I can definitely kill you." As he said, he raised his right hand slightly and gently tapped Suno Kangbai's eyebrows. Suno Kangbai fell into a stagnation directly, his whole head was a mess, and he completely lost the ability to control himself. His magnetic field was completely affected by Lin Yi, and he couldn't even control his own body. For him, it was too easy to target an ordinary person's body. Turning his head to look at Yamashita, "Okay, transport him to Furong City, he will be in a stagnation state for at least 3 days." Looking at Lin Yi's methods, both Yamashita and Yamada Junji beside him were shocked. The ability that Lin Yi showed in a series of events has exceeded their imagination. But the only good thing is that Lin Yi seems to be a peaceful person. So far, they have not seen any great threat in him. A faint smile appeared on Jiro Yamashita's face. "Mr. Lin Yi, please rest assured that we will deliver it to the place you specify within 3 days. Lin Yi nodded, "Okay." 3 days passed in a blink of an eye, and Lin Yi and Sakuramiya surely had returned to the Yorozwaya. This time, with a new light, Lin Yi spent half of his time to revive the underground maze, but the marine lifeland still did not revive. After all, the marine lifeland is too huge. If you want to revive it, the mysterious light produced by the D-level ghost story incident is impossible to do. However, reviving the first floor of the basement is not a difficult thing. At this time, he was conducting experiments in the basement. Seinyi Kangbai was tied to a laboratory table. Lin Yi observed the true destiny he held through the power of the true destiny solution. This observation has lasted for a day, but the gains are not much. Because the true destiny is too complicated, if you want to fully analyze it, he calculated that it will take at least half a year. This is because of the improvement of his ability to analyze the true destiny. The other half of the mysterious light he obtained this time was used to increase the upper limit of his spiritual waves. When he first returned to the Blue Star, the normal state of the true destiny could last for about 2 minutes. After absorbing the light of 2D level events, the duration can reach 5 minutes. And this time, half of the mysterious light once again doubled the time. He can maintain the state of the true destiny with all his strength for about 10 minutes. And this normal state can almost ignore any blockade on the blue star, most of the true destiny's abilities. According to some information he got from Zhao Hongxia, the ability of the God-given cannot be used for a long time. Generally speaking, maintaining a continuous output of 10 minutes is already very powerful. Most ability users only use it for a moment when needed, thereby continuously extending the number of times the true destiny is used. And the time of using the true destiny is also the reason why the godsons on Blue Star are still bound. It's not that they don't want to indulge themselves, but reality makes them have to compromise even if they have the ability. It's not that they don't want to, but that they can't. But this is naturally a good thing for other people on the entire Blue Star. This means that most godsons must maintain a certain respect for humans, and this represents peace. At this time, Sane Yikangbai's face was filled with fear. He couldn't figure out what this man was going to do at all. He was completely treated as a lunatic. He was locked here and couldn't let him move. He was going crazy. What do you want to do? Let me go. I want to kill you, I will kill you one day. Lin Yi looked at Sane Yikangbai with a terrifying smile on his face. Really, why can't you shut up? As the voice fell, a slight magnetic field spread from his body, instantly covering Sane Yikangbai in front of him. Endless pain spread from Sane Yikangbai's body. The pain like a flood washed over his spirit, almost making him collapse in an instant. No. Don't, help me, help me. Lin Yi looked at him calmly. The man in front of him was a typical Japanese. He was a bully who only knew how to talk nonsense and could not bear the real pain. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1219. Just now he manipulated the magnetic field, causing every cell in his body to attack itself. This severe pain will be transmitted along his nerves to every corner of his mind. In the end, he was in great pain and let out an extremely angry roar. Lin Yi just looked at him calmly, not caring about his pain at all. He was torturing him, leaving him with a complete breakdown of his mental will. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Then we can better study our true destiny. He has discovered that the more intense a person's emotional fluctuations are, the more intense the fluctuations in his true life will be. True destiny and man's will are obviously connected. Soon the severe pain seemed to reach the critical point. Mino Kobe trembled all over, rolled his eyes and fainted. Lin Yi looked at the fainted Sane Yikambai, a hint of helplessness flashed across his face. Alas, it's still too weak. The best time to observe is when the true life fluctuates. Unfortunately, in order to achieve the conditions for true life fluctuations, the severe pain must reach a certain level. And he can't last long with this kind of pain, 10 seconds at most. But at the current rate, within 5 months, we should be able to see the rough composition of this true destiny. At that time, if we compare it with the real life, we may be able to discover something. It is not that easy to deduce the seventh true destiny. Sufficient eternal nature is only the most basic condition. Only by finding out the eternal properties and the principles that constitute true life can we truly utilize these eternal properties. Otherwise, it would be impossible to deduce the seventh true life he needs by piecing it all together by luck. This is destined to be a long and long-term thing, and it will take a lot of time to gradually adjust. Today's experiment ended here. Lin Yi turned his eyes to look at the absinthe. He will be left in your care. At this time, a figure walked out of the shadows. It was Absinthe. A twisted smile appeared on his face. Of course there is no problem, I will take good care of him. At this point, his eyes almost narrowed into slits. Lin Yi smiled indifferently, as long as he doesn't die, you can handle the rest. Turning around and leaving the basement, Absinthe's weird laughter continued to sound, and the whole basement echoed with weird laughter. Lin Yi returned to the first floor and sat in his exclusive seat. At this time, brandy, vodka, whiskey, Sakuramiya sherry, Laowei, gin, and Lafite wine were all dressed in staff uniforms. Some of them are working at the counter, and some are taking orders for customers. The whole store is full of life and vitality. There are a large number of customers resting in the store, enjoying the leisurely coffee. There is a lot of traffic outside, and as the city center, this has always been the most prosperous area. Countless people flow here every day, such as Tianjiteku Street in the city center. It is the largest consumption place in the country, where all kinds of internet celebrity luxury goods are concentrated. Every day, a large number of atmosphere groups take photos here, and then spread them virally on video websites to attract traffic and so on. So the business of the store opened by Lin Yi is actually pretty good. Many people who like the petty bourgeoisie atmosphere will come here to sit. The unique environment and exquisite decoration also attract many people. Although there is actually not much money made here, there is no problem in maintaining the daily expenses of Wan Chaiwu. In addition, he now has tens of millions of funds in his hands. For him, this place is purely for fun, and it is also a place to interact with other people. Let's study for a while first. Lin Yi's eyes were deep and he didn't know what he was thinking about. Tongren Street, Furong City, this is the old town of the city. At the corner of this street, an old man squatted here with a pole and two black barrels. One wooden barrel was filled with condiments, and the other seemed to be tofu curd. He didn't know when he came and how long he had been squatting here. People passing by him always ignored his existence unintentionally. Until then, a girl of 17 or 18 years old passed in front of him and suddenly stopped. The girl turned to look at the old man, with a hint of surprise on her face. She came to the old man and said in surprise, "Is this tofu noodle? I've only seen this kind of food sold on a pole on TV." The old jungler slowly raised his head. He looked like an old man in his 70s or 80s, with gray hair, sparse hair, and some stubble on his face. He has a thin face and few teeth. He looks very poor. He is wearing an old Chinese tunic suit with many patches on it. Looking at this scene, the girl's face showed a trace of kind pity. "Grandpa, I want a bowl of tofu puffs." The old man had a smile on his face, and the wrinkles on his face were like chrysanthemums. "Haole, what kind of flavor do you want?" "I have sour, spicy, and sweet here." "I want something spicy," the girl said happily. The old man nodded slightly. "Okay, please wait a moment." With that said, the old man started working, first adjusting the seasoning, and then opening another wooden barrel. Inside is pure white tofu brain, and a sweet smell hits your face. When the girl smelled it, a trace of joy appeared on her face. This fragrance made her very intoxicated. Soon a bowl of tofu puffs was prepared, and the old man brought the tofu puffs in front of the girl. $5. The girl smiled slightly and took out a 5 yuan note from her wallet. The girl seemed to understand that these elderly people did not have electronic payments, so she kept change with her. The old man took the 5 yuan note with a happy smile on his face. "Thank you, girl." With a sweet smile on her face, the little girl left with the bowl of tofu noodle. As she walked and ate, the more she ate, the more delicious it became. In just 2 minutes, she finished the bowl of tofu puffs. After eating, she felt like she couldn't stop, but when he looked back again, the old man carrying the pole had disappeared. There was a trace of displeasure on the girl's face. "Why are you leaving?" "I want another bowl." The displeasure in her heart made her face unhappy, but she had no choice but to return home helplessly. But after returning home, the delicate taste always left her with endless aftertaste. She felt uncomfortable all over and felt that something was wrong. I really want to eat it, it's really delicious. There was an inexplicable look on the girl's face, and she felt uncomfortable in her bones. She always felt itchy all over her body, as if it was itching to the bone. She always wanted to eat something in her mouth, but she couldn't bear it, so she immediately went to the refrigerator at home. The House of Everything I Created. Author, Yinian Luan Tianji. Chapter 1220. The latest chapter of the Wanchaiwu I Created is updated the fastest. The girl opened the refrigerator, looked at the things inside, and her eyes were full of hunger. She immediately used both hands to take out and put them into her mouth. At this time, she bit off half of the apple, but immediately felt uncomfortable in her mouth. It was not the taste she wanted to eat. She immediately threw the apple in her hand to the ground and spit out everything in her mouth. Then, she started to search again, and this time she took out a piece of raw meat. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. She took a bite, but it still had no effect. This was still not what she wanted to eat. She frantically searched for all the food, took a bite and threw it away. None of them suited her taste and could not relieve her inner restlessness. Ah, where is it? Where is it? Is there anything to eat? I want to eat, I want to eat. The beautiful face of the girl had become hideous at this time, with an expression of anxiety, greed, and hunger on her face. The beautiful face also became ugly, looking so terrible. Suddenly, her eyes fell on her arm, and she seemed to smell something sweet. She suddenly opened her mouth and bit her left arm. The taste of blood filled her mouth, as if she had eaten the most delicious thing in the world. The girl began to bite herself frantically, and as the blood flowed, her body became more and more incomplete, and her face was all pale. She had already knelt on the ground, her arms had been eaten up, her legs had been eaten half, and all the places on her body that could be bitten were eaten. Her belly was bulging high, as if she was pregnant, and more than 1/3 of her blood had flowed. A dizziness enveloped her, and finally she fell directly to the ground, her eyes were confused and motionless. At this time, the door of her house slowly opened, and the old man carrying a shoulder pole walked in with a weird smile on his face. Looking at the girl whose hands and feet were almost like skeletons on the ground, the old man's eyes flashed with a twisted joy. Not bad, good material. As he said that, he stretched out his hands and inserted them into the girl's stomach, and then pulled it hard to tear it open. The stomach was a bloody meat paste, and at this time a snow-white, tofu-like thing was fused with the blood and flesh. These snow-white tofu seemed to have some kind of infectious power. These blood and flesh were gradually transformed into a piece of snow-white and soft tofu. The old man showed a happy expression on his face, and his magic hand dug out the whole piece of tofu, and then put it into his shoulder pole barrel. His hands were covered with blood, and the blood quickly disappeared under his skin, as if it no longer existed. Then, the old man stood up from the ground, picked up the shoulder pole, and quickly left here. The door slowly closed, as if nothing had happened. There was only a disemboweled corpse and a face with a strange and satisfied smile, and blood on the corners of the mouth in the kitchen. Such a horrifying scene was enough to stop the child from crying. About a few hours later, the door of the house was opened, and a gentle female voice slowly sounded. "Linlin, I'm back, have you cooked?" It was a middle-aged woman about 40 years old, with wrinkles left by the years in the corners of her eyes, and a hint of joy on her face. Apparently she was in a good mood today. But unfortunately, when she came to the kitchen, she saw a hellish scene. Ah! The terrified scream sounded from the mouth of the middle-aged woman, deafening. The sirens quickly gathered, and an undercurrent slowly surged. Zhao Hengxia was in her office at this time dealing with various recent events in Furong City. Especially for strange events, as long as traces are found, various procedures will be immediately activated to prevent and intervene in these strange events. Usually a large number of people are sent out to perform tasks, the purpose of which is to reduce casualties. But even so, at least one person dies from a ghost story every day in Furong City. Although this is a small number compared to the death rate of thousands of people in Furong City every day due to various reasons. But this is the result of strong intervention. If there is no intervention, the death may be more. At that time, it may attract the attention of the whole society. Most ghost stories are handled very low-key, so low-key that people cannot find any death information. At this time, she received a brand new report, and a trace of solemnity suddenly appeared on her face. What is this? Isn't this an ordinary way of death, a ghost story that has never happened before? Her face showed a trace of gloom, and then she picked up the phone directly. Now there is a new ghost story incident, and immediately conduct a detailed investigation of this ghost story from beginning to end. If there is a clue, notify me as soon as possible. After explaining the order, Zhao Hengxia's face showed a trace of solemnity. This is the second new ghost story this year. In the past, there might not be a new incident every 10 years, why did two appear this year? Thinking of this, a trace of solemnity appeared in her eyes. Zhao Hengxia clearly felt something was wrong. The probability of ghost stories appearing is very strange. There is no pattern at all. Maybe it is an insignificant thing, but it suddenly leads to the emergence of strange events. This also makes the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau only deal with these things passively. Their only active way is to find the logical chain and solve one strange event after another. For countless years, their success rate is less than 1/10. There are too many strange events that cannot find their logical chain at all, and all they can do in the end is to maintain the status quo. Sighing deeply, Zhao Hengxia looked at the other side of the desk. There are 3 files there, all of which are 3 strange events that have been solved recently. And the person who solved them is Lin Yi, a person full of countless secrets. According to these 3 reports, his personality has been revised, and the danger level is still B. Then what we need to do next is very simple. You can try to deepen the cooperative relationship with him. Try to use his abilities to solve strange events. The 3 cases he solved were all D-level events, and only one was changing to C-level, but it did not completely evolve into a C-level event in the end. Now you can consider inviting him to solve a C-level event. You can also test his ability again and dig out his secrets bit by bit. A hint of coldness appeared in Zhao Hengxia's eyes. As the executive captain of the Abnormal Events Investigation Bureau, these people are all vigorous and resolute guys. Everything is based on ensuring human safety. There is no pure kindness at all.